All right, guys, welcome to the May Sky. This is going to be a little rundown of all the stuff that's going on this month. Obviously, we're a little late. I am recording this the day after the coronation, which I think was May the 6th. You think we would know the date off by heart, but time has just got this really weird liminal quality right now for me. I'm sure it has for lots of us based on what's going on out there. So I actually did a version of this recording on May the 1st, probably the day it should have been done. I know everything's in its right time. And this is really just about a rundown of the kind of cosmic weather or the astrological meteorology of the month. And it really helps me just to have a sense of what shape the energy is taking, the flow of what's happening when we have different aspects and different planets and asteroids moving in and out of certain aspects. It really helps me to get a sense of the prevailing vibe. I find that personally really validating, and it really helps me to see whether bumps in the road might be. It helps me to understand how and when I might be having some days that feel like real mountains and some that feel like real valleys. And it's really just the reason I love astrology overall. When we know what's going on out there, we can have a conversation with what's going on in here. And that can really help us to navigate our way through all of the challenges and practicalities and emotional landscapes that we're in our human skin suits. So this has been a really intense year so far. 2023 has seen or has some of the biggest astrology in recent times, some really big transitions and some really big aspects. And March and April have seen some of the biggest astrology we've seen actually in possibly in decades. Things like Saturn moving into Pisces has been a really big story, and then Pluto's moving to Aquarius, you probably know by now, is something that only happens roughly between 14 and about 25 years. In this case, Pluto's stay in Capricorn was quite short, but his stay in Aquarius is going to be a lot longer. So this is a really profound time, a big kind of energetic shift for the planet, and something we can all really learn from. So I really want to stress that for me, astrology is never about forecasting or predicting the future. That's not what we do here. What I find really useful about astrology is that it helps us understand nature's patterns and cycles. We can see how we respond under certain types of energy. We can see when we are in more flow and when we find things a little more challenging. And it's really that kind of awareness of pattern and the cyclical nature of life that helps us when we move towards forecasting. We're not predicting that things are going to happen on certain days, but what we can do is see a pattern that certain energies take a certain shape under certain astrological formations, and that helps us get a bit of a sense of the ebb and flow of life. So that's what my take on astrology is all about. I hope you resonate with that, otherwise you wouldn't be here. And what I want to talk about today is what's going on for the rest of May. So May is kind of just seems to have started and suddenly we're a week in, but that doesn't mean we can't talk about the rest of the month. And actually it kind of makes perfect sense that we start a little bit late in May, because May is dominated by Taurus season, which is very earthy, and it's kind of feeling like a really good time to bring this big turbulent energy that we've been working with during April, Aries season. Time that we brought that into land. Aries is all about fire and new beginnings and getting ignitions on the go, getting started, initiating its cardinal energy. And then Taurus, the second house that follows Aries, is all about taking all that fire and bringing it down into some sort of structure, getting the roots in, taking care of the foundations, embracing our self-worth, and really building from the roots up. So it's about kind of taking all of that big kind of expansive, explosive rocket fuel that Aries brings into the kind of arena, into the playing field, and go, okay, great, that's all really awesome. We've got started. Now, how are we going to actually give this some longevity, sustainability, and some structure? So Taurus is a lot more of a slow season, and it's felt quite slow to me, actually. Taurus is fixed earth energy, so it's really all about resilience. And this solar season does have a slower feel. We really want to take our time to move more slowly towards our goals. The dynamic Aries season is more about the pace and the rush, but Taurus deliberately turns that on its head. So I feel like we've collectively been coming into a little slowdown after this really kind of big, powerful March into April. So the bigger picture is that we are on a bit of a slowdown generally. We have a couple of key planets retrograding right now, Mercury and Pluto, which add to that kind of general slowdown feel and bring us more into a state of our inner vision, especially on matters around transformation and regeneration in our communities and peer groups. So this is because Pluto is in Aquarius, which rules over 11th house energies, which is all about the group, the community, and kind of the people that we surround ourselves with. This is also really about the language that we use to speak to ourselves and to others, and that's the Mercury piece. Mercury rules communication and the word, whether written or spoken. So when we have a Mercury retrograde, people often have this idea that it's just bad, it's technology, it's everything breaking, don't sign contracts. And honestly, I've had some really bad tech fails this Mercury retrograde. My MacBook is just in pieces. It's been a disaster. I've just had such a lot of stress with tech. But I was reflecting and writing on this today in my newsletter that really retrogrades are not a bad energy, but they're really common. We have 3 a year. They're not, these kind of big horror shows that often I think social media shows them to be. What retrogrades are all about is about slowdown. It's about review and reflection. And what's happening when a planet retrogrades is not that it's going backwards. It's an optical illusion from where we are on Earth. Of course, planets don't just suddenly stop and turn the handbrake and go backwards. That wouldn't make any sense in terms of physics and astronomy. What happens is just the way the orbits are interacting with each other and the way we are stood here on Earth. It looks like Mercury is moving backwards, and actually, of course, he's not. But what he's doing is revisiting the parts of the zodiac he's already been to. So in this particular retrograde, Mercury was at, I think it was about 15 degrees of Taurus when he hit retrograde. And actually, from where we were on Earth, it started to look like he was backtracking through parts of the sky and through degrees of Taurus that he'd already been in. So what this means is that we're then invited to also slow down, pause, and have a look backwards to reflect or retrograde our energies over those same degrees of Taurus, in this case 15 back to 5, which is where he will start then to go forward again. So this really just looks like a second pass, like a second look at the energy, an opportunity to have a review, to go back to something we've already done, to have a look at how things flow, to decide if maybe we might want to adapt something or change it up or do something a little bit differently this time round. So retrogrades don't have to have this scary feel, but they do have a slow down feel. They encourage us to redo things, to look at something a second time, which isn't that comfortable for all of us. And if we're kind of quite dynamic people and we like to push forward and get things done, retrogrades tend to like chafe a little bit against our natural energies, which is why they can be really uncomfortable for some people more than others. But of course, retrogrades are always going to be defined by the planets and the signs they're in and the houses they affect for us. So a retrograde in Taurus is really an opportunity to think about the Taurian themes of value, self-worth, abundance, money, the material stuff. So it's kind of a period of reflection on all of these aspects of life. And then you can have a look at which house Taurus is for you, and that's going to give you a sense of exactly where this lands fully. Like for me, my 4th house is Taurus ruled. So it's really interesting that actually this is home and family, and I've just been doing a big relocation, moving house, moving closer to my family again. So it's the questions for me when Mercury, communication, is retrograding in Taurus, worth, value, abundance, in my 4th house, which is all about home and family. You can see how those kind of different stories or narratives weave together, and my focus has been pulled into this particular area of home and what I value in home, what I value in family, where the abundance in those areas of my life lies. So hopefully you can see like what the idea around retrograde energies is really all about. And it is certainly not about just refusing to sign contracts, freaking out, throwing your laptop out the window, although I felt like throwing mine out the last few days. So the slowdown energy is kind of present across lots of parts of our lives right now. And this is, the Mercury retrograde is still on until the 15th of May. And then there is this kind of period where it takes a little while for Mercury to get back up to his pace, when a planet sort of starts to go forward again, or stations direct is the phrase after it's been retrograde. It does take a little time for it to get back up to kind of full speed effectively. So in reality, it's going to be the end of May before we really start to feel like back in flow with our kind of communication story, with how we're using our words. And that's really kind of a marker for the whole month. Actually, this is a time of a bit more stillness, a bit more kind of structure, working on those foundations, looking at our Taurus part of our chart and taking time for review and reflection in that area. So Pluto is also retrograde throughout May, and he is moving backwards to that first degree of Aquarius. Remember, Pluto only went into Aquarius back in March, and he's already now headed back into Capricorn. He's going to be dipping back into Capricorn from mid-June. I think it's about the 11th. So Pluto's all about going into the caves, like the real deep kind of lesser seen parts of self. Pluto's really connected to Scorpio, and Scorpionic energy is all about the sacral chakra, about those kind of deep transformative, regenerative kind of roots, really deep, dark down, that we don't really see too much. It's Pluto's all about ploughing back through kind of the caves, the old stories, the old programming, looking at how to evolve ourselves from those plutonic depths that we don't really get to in normal day-to-day life. It's never quick fix stuff. Pluto does everything slowly. His orbit is massive. His time spent in each sign is huge. It's long game work. So whatever Pluto touches does tend to be the long game and the end game. It's very much a kind of a story that's going to stay with us for a long period of time. So you might have been almost alarmed, as I certainly have in moments, to think that Pluto moving into Aquarius means Pluto is going to be, kind of pulling transformative stories through that Aquarius part of your chart for up to 20 years, which feels very long. If like me, that's, basically I've got an intercepted second house. So for me, it's all first house stuff that's just endless. That feels like it's been going on forever already in Capricorn. But Pluto is really, his energy is so much, but like the big zoom out, really taking a long, slow, hard look at the big picture. So whatever Pluto's touching is opportunity for transformation, but to do it really, really from the absolute roots. It's not superficial, like kind of, you're having a bad hair day and you go and, get a treatment from Boots, or, get your colour redone. It's not kind of, oh, it's a quick fix. It's like, actually, I'm going to grow this out and spend the next 10 years like reframing my face with a new shape. It's a really kind of long, slow process. So whatever Pluto touches does tend to be the long game, and where Pluto is right now is Aquarius, which is inviting a review of what we need to transform over the next 20 years and around the Aquarian themes, which are community groups, humanitarianism, and you can really dive deeper and have a look at the house in your chart that contains Aquarius as well. So Pluto and Mercury being retrograde is creating this slow down energy as we move through this first part of May. And then we've also had in the last few days a full moon, and not just any full moon, but it's been an eclipse. So it's weird because I did this chat to camera originally before the eclipse, and now doing it after. It's kind of trying to shift from my notes to the post-eclipse energies. But the eclipse was on Friday, so 5th of May, and it was the eclipse in Scorpio, a full moon in Scorpio. So a lot of those themes I just talked about from Pluto really apply here as well. Eclipses do add a quantum energy to the mix. They kind of have a real capacity for accelerating change, for illuminating deep discoveries, and for stripping out the things we're struggling to let go of. So, if you're really gripping and really hanging on to something, a Scorpio eclipse is going to just literally tear it out your hands, probably take your fingernails with it, and just rip it away. You cannot hold on to things that are not for you under this energy, which is why for a lot of us, this eclipse has probably been very intense and really quite traumatic. We've had things come up and be kind of wrestled away from us that perhaps we're not ready to let go of, that we really want to try and have another pass at. So again, the clues here is to have a look at where the Scorpio part of your chart is, have a look at what's going on there, which house does it connect to, and you may find that that's the part of your chart that's had a particular flashpoint over this weekend. I also want to mention that eclipses are, obviously peak. There's a moment where they are, complete, in this case, this penumbral lunar eclipse, but they're also kind of a gateway. They're a portal. They're the beginning of something. So what happens with eclipse energy now is going to kind of really extend over the next 6 months until we reach the end of this cycle in Scorpio. So it's really worth noting that things, don't necessarily just happen overnight on an eclipse. Probably the trigger or the initiatory energy does, but actually it's going to be a stretch over a period of time. So you can kind of see this as like the beginning of a bit of a 6-month journey with whatever this eclipse has brought up for you. A Scorpio eclipse, I say this as a good Scorpio, as lots of you know, Scorpio sun and stellium. Scorpio energy is really not to be messed with. Scorpios rule transformation, the dark side, the secrets we keep, the grudges. It's kind of, again, long game stuff. We often find that Scorpionic energy is turned inwards, so it can be quite, a big Scorpio eclipse is something that we can find quite hard to cope with personally. we become kind of almost self-flagellating or kind of turning on ourselves energetically. So I know I've had quite a few teary moments and sobby moments this weekend and feeling really defeated and what's it all for, and I can't do this anymore, how do I go forward? That kind of sort of self-flagellation can be very intense under this energy, and it can be really hard to remember to be kind to yourself. So if you haven't already over this bank holiday weekend, I really suggest taking time now and over the next few weeks to really bring some kindness into your kind of approach to self. And actually Taurus solar season is really good for that, because Taurus loves to luxuriate, to eat good food, loves a long soak in the bath with rose petals and milk and honey. So maybe look to give yourself some of those treats, like romance yourself and the Taurian energy to push through the kind of grittier, darker side of the Scorpio eclipse, and you'll probably find you can hold yourself a little more safely if you take that approach. So lunar eclipses are very much about shifts in consciousness, and this one does feel very specifically an end point and a closure. So even though, as I was saying, this is kind of the gateway to a journey over a 6-month period, it does feel that it's about kind of the curtain coming down on something. So I really encourage you to sit, especially, you know, like me, I've got a couple of projects right now which just need to be let go of. They haven't worked, they're failing, or, you know, I've just done something that doesn't feel like it's right for me or my people, my customers, my friends, my family. And I need to just know at this point that this is the guillotine kind of, okay, we're done. And then probably it's going to take me a few months to action that kind of closure and unpacking of everything and unraveling of it all. So the nature of Scorpio does suggest that the sort of surfacing shadows and stories from the past and challenging situations are going to rise all the way up from those deep kind of Plutonic, dark Scorpionic, cavey roots, come to the surface and be ready to be purged. You know, purge is a really key word over this moon. So it's really advisable to take some time, get your journal out, spend time with your journal in this energy, spend time really going around the corners of your mind and your heart for what's really lingering and what is ready to be purged, regenerated, resolved and released. So the eclipse is part of the Scorpio-Taurus axis. This has been going on since November 2021. So as you approach and move through this eclipse energy in this sort of early section of May, it's definitely worth having a little cast back to November 21. Think about the themes that were beginning there, because what began there is what is now beginning to come to an end as you move into the back end of this eclipse energy. Just a quick note, because this really applies to me, but the people who are going to be most affected by the eclipse energy that we are currently moving through, and we're kind of on the back end of it, but as I said, it is a longer game, is people who have very specifically things going on at 13, 14 or 15 degrees of Scorpio, in which case it's a conjunction with the eclipse, Taurus, in which case we have got an opposition, or Leo and Aquarius, which are the other two of the fixed signs, and they're going to be square to this eclipse. So as it happens, I've got something at 14 degrees of all 4 of those signs. So for me, it's been a very intense weekend, and I'm not surprised I'm feeling quite teary and overwhelmed. And if you are too, then sending love and sympathy and hugs, and know that, you know, this really, for those of us that have those kind of placements, it's really just an extra potent opportunity to really do that hard work that perhaps we find quite hard to look in the face. So tomorrow we have the Sun conjunct Uranus. This is going to be the 9th of May. And this kind of really is like a final bolt to really kind of give us a bit more of a shock through the eclipse energy. Uranus is all about the unexpected, about the rebellion, about innovation, about surprise. It has a general vibe of being a little bit uncomfortable, but it can also be really good energy. So my sense is that, especially because Uranus is conjunct the Sun in a cazimi, where the Sun and a planet come into direct alignment, that this is this just kind of feels to me like kind of almost like a bolt of illumination to support us as we move through all this big purging energy. So actually we've probably gone through a couple of quite heavy days, and now here's the spotlight to show us why and what we're doing, and maybe bring something new into that gap that we've just created from deciding what to let go of. I feel like it's a bit of I've written down on my notes that this Uranus conjunction with the Sun tomorrow is kind of like a little defibrillator on the eclipse. We're all kind of a bit, like, you know, eclipsed out, like pretty heavy. It's in quite shadowy energy, and then this is kind of like bolt. Okay, you're back, like back to life. Come on, let's move forward. How are we going to carry on? And anything Uranian is an invitation to look into areas where we feel unstable and shaky, and to make some big shifts and inject some fresh ideas. So I feel that there is this kind of like to the chest, like, come on, let's go, big new ideas, let's fill the gap, let's come up and start with something fresh. So I feel this is quite an exciting couple of days coming up now after what has felt like a very heavy, slow start to May. I should pause for breath, there's such a lot going on. So as we move through May, the good news is we're going to get some real shift as we get through the middle part of the month. Things are starting to lighten up, and this is when we start to shift the narrative around the Taurian themes. So again, coming back to Taurus energy, abundance, values, self-worth, money, wealth, the stuff, the material world. We are really invited as the energy shifts and planets start to move into new formations and transits mid-month to really kind of start taking affirmative action around the whirlpool that's been going on. So really, we've had the eclipse being this kind of big vortex around which everything else has moved. And then the Pluto and Mercury retrogrades causing everything to go a bit slower, backwards and more inward and more reflective. And now as we move into the middle of the month, things start to change. So I already mentioned that Mercury's retrograde is officially over on the 15th of May. He will station direct and begin to speed back up, journeying back through those degrees of Taurus that we've already now been over twice. So now we can start to learn from what we've been reflecting on and start to put those roots in and take that action. And this is really so much about how we talk about ourselves in terms of value, how we assign our value. For a lot of us in business, this is a good time to think about things like price points. Am I pricing myself appropriately? Am I in my value? Am I really kind of showing up for myself and backing myself is kind of a theme that I think is going to be quite big. And then we've got something really nice that happens off the back of this. So the day after Mercury goes direct, we have got on May the 16th, Jupiter moving into Taurus. So we've already talked loads about the Taurian theme. So Jupiter's energy is all about archetypally optimism, positivity, hope, abundance, again, that key word, expansion. Jupiter's like the winning lottery ticket. He brings like a little fairy godmother dust of gold sparkles to everything. Whatever Jupiter meets, he expands. So we've had quite a lot of talk about Saturnian energy early in 2023. Like Saturn was a very big story through March, through Aries season. And now we see Jupiter making his shift. He changes signs every year. His cycles kind of about 12 months. So we get this kind of lovely blast of energy into the place we've just been purging, reviewing, and kind of walking back through slowly, which feels really right on time. And I love when astrology does this. Almost the best thing to me that could happen right after a Mercury retrograde is for Jupiter to come in and kind of bless that retrograde space with like, okay, cool, now you've done the review and the revision basically for the exam. You've done the exam, and now what job are you going to go and get with this wonderful new qualification you've got. So it's a chance to really start actioning and find confidence, self-confidence, and kind of belief in those Taurian themes. So especially for those of us that have really been struggling with abundance, with money, with our understanding of wealth or what we deserve, it's a time to really start leaning into a bit more optimism and a bit more self-belief in those parts of life. So again, the best way to look at this for yourself is just remind yourself of which house Taurus is, which area of your chart contains Taurus, and that's going to help you see where Jupiter's expansion is going to be most visible. If you are feeling pretty good and expanded anyway, it just helps you to kind of really pinpoint and make space in your life, maybe for whether it's reviews at work or looking at moving house, that kind of thing. It's really helps you pinpoint where you might be able to bring this expansion into reality. So 15th, 16th of May is going to start feeling, I think, like quite a different energy. It's not going to suddenly change overnight, but I feel like there's definitely two parts to this month, up to May the 15th and after May the 15th. So the other thing that happens just after Mercury goes direct and Jupiter moves into Taurus is that we have a new moon in Taurus. And this is on May the 19th. So bearing in mind that the following day or the following 2 days, we've then got shifts and we start to move into Gemini season. So this new moon is very late in Taurus season, and it feels actually really appropriate because new moons are beginnings. They are about kind of seeds and flowers, about growing and blooming from a point of a new beginning. And I think this new moon in Taurus is so much about taking all the learnings we've had from Mercury retrograde, all the stuff that's come up and been shaken around from the eclipse. We've had a little bit of a bolt of, okay, cool, now we can grow and be positive from Jupiter moving into Taurus. And now we get the new moon, which is the bit where we really set the intentions, where we kind of really consciously plant into the ground, and we can then start to move forward over the 6-month cycle, drawing those intentions up. And new moon's a very good time for manifestation. So it feels like we you know, as we've moved through the full moon eclipse, that's usually when we avoid kind of calling stuff in. It's about letting things go and endings, sacred endings. But this new moon feels like now it's time to expand, to open. So in a way, our kind of month's work is leading up to this new moon in Taurus. It's the beginning of a new narrative, but there is potentially a tripwire because there's some big fire around this new moon. We've got Mars, it's the god of wars, all about our Shiva, our masculine, our yang, our dynamic action, is going to be making a conjunction with Pluto, who has again been very present this month. And that's going to bring a bit of a kind of a blast of passion and dynamism and possibly a bit of discomfort to what's traditionally quite a cuddly moon. You know, Taurus new moons are usually very sort of like pink and fluffy and cacao and roses. Definitely that nice sexy bath with the milk and honey and the glass of wine. But this feels like it's maybe like a tiny blast of eclipse hangover. It's just making sure that you have definitely shifted everything. That the eclipse has really cleared out the patterns and thought patterns and anything around abundance and self-worth that's been holding you down and holding you back. I feel like Mars and Pluto are here to be like, okay, cool, but shall we just have one last little bit of fire and just make sure you've got it all before we move on? So I think this new moon is about manifesting. It is about bringing new narratives and new intentions into our Taurian themes and ideals in the house that contains Taurus. But I think it's doing it with not quite as much soft focus romanticism as we might expect from a Taurus new moon. So I think do be prepared for a little bit of fire. And this is exacerbated because the day after the Taurus new moon, May the 20th, Mars is also going to change signs, and Mars is going to move into Leo, which is big fire. But I think this is a really positive, upbeat energy. I'm feeling really excited for this one. It's, you know, Leo is all about the kind of the May, and I've gone a bit Leo with my unwashed sesame hair today. It's about, you know, pride and kind of swooshy and confidence and personality and really standing up, stepping up, being seen, taking the stage. Mars is that active kind of vital life force, like really like pushing forward, dynamic forward facing action. So Mars going into Leo, he's super at home there. You know, he's been spending time in Cancer, which is not a sign Mars likes to be in. So this is a kind of a like throttle out, foot down, pedal to the metal, let's roll. It's a really big moment for bringing confidence, for backing yourself, for stepping up and being seen. I wrote in my notes, shake your mane. So shake your mane. It's a chance to bask in this new version of self that you've most likely been working through retrograde energies early in May, like working through some probably quite a lot of discomfort through this eclipse phase that we're in right now. And now we're kind of moving into like, okay, let's go forward, let's work with the Taurian roots, and let's now bring this action and, you know, all this kind of evolution we've been doing out into the real world. So Mars and Leo is like a real lift, I think, at the end of the month, and it's really going to feel very different to where we've been for the first 3 weeks of the month. And then the following day, May the 21st, we're done with Taurus season. Hello, Gemini. Those of you that know me will know this is not my favourite season of the year. I struggle every year with Gemini season, probably because I have a lot in Sagittarius, which is opposite. But I feel really good about this Gemini season. I feel like it's going to feel really needed. It's going to feel really light and a bit effervescent and a bit bubbly. And I think this Taurus energy, you know, it is fixed earth and Gemini is mutable air. So it's, you know, whereas Taurus is grounded and structured and about kind of the roots and building and sinking down and just being kind of, I can't think of the word, luxuriating in this stuff. Gemini is about letting all that stuff go, lifting up, being lightweight. You know, it's leaving the house with just your keys and your phone instead of a big handbag. It's more social. It's more about getting back out there into the life and soul. It's definitely more about clear communication and bringing communication back to the front, which I think after the retrogrades is going to be really a helpful energy. By the time we get into Gemini season, Mercury's beginning to speed back up. We're beginning to get more confidence back with our voice. We know the journey we've been on and what we've reviewed and released in Taurus season. And now the focus is moving from grounding and practicality and value into communication and ideas and the mind. So it's all quite a big shift. Gemini does bring a social buzz, and after what's felt like quite an inward Taurus season and an inward month of May, I think we're going to feel ready to shift the story and really get out there into summer vibes. It's that bit where you start ordering rosé and Aperol spritzes because it feels like summer is here. So it's really a nice end to the month. I feel like Gemini season is a bit lighter. There is still big stuff going on. This whole year is just littered with one big piece of astrology after another. but it does feel like there's going to be a lot more of a lightness and clarity as we end the month. Don't forget that Gemini, you know, famously can be very flighty and fickle and hard to pin down and very yin yang, black is white, white is black, where's the grey? It can be very polarizing. But the highest vibration and the highest expression of Gemini is clarity, like really clear communication, ability to land a message, real awareness of the voice and the impact. And I feel like, you know, we've not been seeing that in our society and our politics and ourselves for quite some time. A lot of conflict energy has been around. But I feel like there's kind of an open goal to really move into that higher vibration of Gemini this season. And all this retrograde work we've been doing during May and this big eclipse kind of asking us to really check in with our self-worth, our values, build our confidence. We should be in a good place to really get out, you know, hang on to the coattails of that Gemini vibe and really speak our truth and be really clear about it as well. So I'm feeling okay about Gemini season this year. We'll see how it all unfolds. So that is your quick rundown of May astrology. So speedy summary, beginning retrograde slowdown and inward phase, which we're currently in. The lunar eclipse in Scorpio, duck for cover. Hopefully you did that on Friday. We have still more of that coming through, but it does feel like we're kind of moving through the shadow portal in full now. Mercury direct May the 15th and Jupiter in Taurus May the 16th. A welcome boost for everybody. New moon in Taurus May the 19th. Chance to clean the slate. Mars moving into Leo May the 20th. That is a confidence booster and builder. And then Gemini season 21st of May. Change the narrative up. So those are the bullet points. Those are your cosmic weather headlines. I hope you have enjoyed this little rundown of what's happening and when. And if you have questions, please pop them into the comments. Please drop me a message. Let me know what's showing up for you, how it's showing up, how you feel, how you think any of this is relevant to you, or if you think it isn't. Always good to get an understanding of where you're at and what we can do together to move through these very incredibly challenging times we're in as a nation and as a people and as a planet. So astrology is always here as our guide, as our mirror, and as our kind of pattern and cyclical builder to help us understand what's really going on and understand our place in the world. And I hope it will help you do that too. Of course, if you would like to learn more about your own chart, then you can book in a one-to-one with me to talk about the details of all your individual placements and planets. When I'm talking about which house Gemini is for you or Taurus is for you, those are the things we can dive deep into. We can do that as a meeting your natal chart if it's the first time you're having a reading and really diving deep into astrology for yourself. Or we can do it as a transit chart. If you have a little bit of a baseline understanding or you're, you know, regular at reading your chart and reading what's going on, then we can look at particular journeys of particular planets and energies as we move through the next 3 to 6 months. You can also join my online course, STAR NOMAD, which I'm just about to refilm the second half of and get completed online for you. That's an 8-week course where you can broadly do a similar thing, but you're going to do it self-paced. You move through 8 classes as the 9th bonus class as well, looking at each planet and each energy and where it shows up for you and how to unpack the placement in your own chart. And the idea really is to leave you being your own astrologer. So you're able to sit and look at what's going on. You can listen to videos like the one I've just shared with you and really understand in inherent depth what this means for you and how this might show up and what, you know, things like Jupiter moving into Taurus means, what you might want to put your focus on in that part of the month and how you might meet it. So any questions for any of that, drop me a message. I'll put all the links you need in the notes, and I wish you a very beautiful May. And I promise to get the June forecast or the June report to you a little bit nearer the beginning of the month. This one is, I'm just going to blame this on the eclipse this month, but I hope you've enjoyed and take good care. I'll see you soon.